Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this expectation of precision. Like it feels almost like engineering, right?
Right, yeah. It's very binary.
Exactly. You break your arm, the X-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, there it is.
Yeah, it's visible. I mean, we like our problems neatly categorized so we can, wrap our human minds around them. It gives us a sense of control over our own biology.
It really does. But then you step into the world of artificial intelligence, especially where it's heading right now, and suddenly that X-ray machine feels like it's fundamentally broken.
Or maybe, more accurately, it's seeing a spectrum of light we don't even have the eyes for.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We're looking at a landscape that is just incredibly murky. And that murkiness is exactly what we're dissecting today.
Using a single, highly concentrated snapshot of news, right?
Yep, dated March 28th, 2026. We are unpacking this specific daily digest for you to understand exactly how AI is reshaping the foundational pillars of our society.
It's a profound snapshot, honestly. We're looking at a moment where, well, theoretical ideas about machine learning suddenly became very practical very quickly.
We're talking breakthroughs in healthcare, high-stakes finance, the creative arts, and finally, the ethical guardrails that are desperately trying to keep all of this tethered to reality.
And I think it's important to note that while medicine, finance, and art might seem entirely distinct, they're all deeply connected by a single underlying tension.
Oh, absolutely.
As we comb through these sources today, you're going to see this friction everywhere. It's the expanding, almost incomprehensible capabilities of AI versus our deeply ingrained human need to understand and ultimately, control the tools we build.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to begin right where AI has historically flexed its muscles the hardest, which is processing just massive, unimaginable oceans of data to find logical patterns.
Right, the ultimate pattern recognizer.
Exactly. So the digest highlights a major breakthrough in healthcare. A leading university has developed this new machine learning model that is scanning vast amounts of patient data. And the key phrasing in the report, which really stood out to me, is that it's identifying patterns that human eyes literally miss.
Which is incredible.
It is. It's catching diseases like cancer and diabetes much earlier than any traditional method.
Which means, we aren't just talking about a computer doing a doctor's job faster. We are talking about a machine operating in a high-dimensional vector space that a human physician physically and cognitively just cannot access.
Right.
A doctor looks at a patient's history and maybe connects, 5 or 10 variables like diet, genetics, age, recent symptoms.
Sure. The standard stuff.
But this model is simultaneously weighing tens of thousands of microscopic variables across millions of historical patient outcomes.
To put that in perspective for you, it's less like a super sleuth detective finding a single obvious scuff mark at a crime scene. It's more like someone tasting a complex bowl of soup and instantly being able to list every single microscopic grain of spice.
Yeah.
The exact temperature the water boiled at, the mineral content of the soil where the vegetables grew, all while we just sit there and say, it tastes a little salty.
That is the exact mechanism at play. And what makes this specific university model so revolutionary is how it approaches the composition of that soup.
Right, the data itself.
Exactly. For years, the Achilles heel of AI has been demographic bias. If a neural network is trained primarily on data from one specific demographic, its mathematical weights will optimize for a very narrow biological reality.
So it basically overfits the model to one type of person.
Right.
Which means it becomes phenomenal at diagnosing that one demographic, but functionally useless or even dangerous, honestly, for anyone else.
Exactly. But the digest specifically notes that the researchers behind this new model deliberately engineered incredibly diverse data sets to ensure effectiveness across all demographics.
What's fascinating here is how tackling this bias is no longer framed as like a social initiative or a theoretical ethical debate.
Right. It's a strict mathematical necessity for the product to actually function globally. The model's pattern recognition is really only as valuable as the breadth of its vision.
So by forcing the neural network to generalize its findings across a truly diverse pool of human biology, they're preventing the algorithm from taking lazy mathematical shortcuts based on surface-level traits.
Precisely. They're forcing the AI to identify the true underlying pathology of the disease. It improves the rigorousness of the science by improving the representation of the data.
It just makes the tool objectively superior. Now, the digest takes this exact same concept of superhuman pattern recognition and applies it to a completely different sector. Finance. A prominent financial firm has launched a new AI-driven platform that predicts market trends. And the report uses the phrase, with unprecedented precision.
Of course it does.
Right, it's digesting centuries of historical market data, global supply chain logs, real-time economic indicators, all to reduce risk and maximize returns.
It's identifying the microscopic correlations that precede a market shift, like a slight change in shipping container traffic in one hemisphere correlating with a fractional dip in semiconductor production in another.
Patterns a human analyst couldn't map in a lifetime.
Not even close.
But this is where the source introduces a massive contradiction. The developers of this incredibly precise market-predicting platform explicitly emphasize that human oversight remains crucial.
Yeah, that part is very interesting.
They insist a human still needs to interpret and act on the data. So I have to ask you, if the AI is operating in this high-dimensional space, seeing the entire global board perfectly, just like it saw the microscopic science of cancer, why do the developers insist a human police chief is required to pull the trigger? Doesn't the human just slow the machine down?
It seems counterintuitive, I know, but it gets to the core of what these algorithms actually are. We have to separate pattern recognition from contextual judgment.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, the AI is optimizing for mathematical probability based on historical precedent, but the stock market is not a closed mathematical loop.
Right, it's people.
Exactly. It's driven by fundamentally irrational human behavior, panic, and geopolitical chaos.
So you're saying it's like the difference between perfectly calculating the physical trajectory of a thrown ball versus understanding that the person attempting to catch the ball is currently distracted by a ringing phone and is probably going to drop it?
Precisely. The AI might predict a massive stock sell-off because the historical data perfectly aligns with a pattern from, say, 2008.
But the human knows better.
Right. The human overseer understands the messy, real-world context outside of the numbers. They know that a specific piece of legislation is being signed tomorrow, or that consumer sentiment has radically shifted overnight due to a cultural event.
Something that hasn't even registered in the raw financial data yet.
Exactly. The machine finds the mathematical needle, but the human understands the context of the haystack.
So AI optimizes for probability, but humans optimize for reality.
Yeah.
And reality is, well, it's irrational.
Very irrational.
Which actually perfectly sets up the next section of this digest. Because if this incredible precision in cold, hard data like blood tests and stock tickers is so effective, it forces us to ask a much more uncomfortable question.
What happens when it tackles something subjective?
Exactly. What happens when that exact same pattern recognition engine is pointed at the human soul?
Yeah, this is where the narrative shifts from logical analysis to something deeply contentious.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We're moving out of the hospital and the stock exchange and into the art gallery. The digest covers a new AI program developed by a team of tech-savvy artists that is actively composing music and creating visual art.
And it's using deep learning to mimic the styles of famous composers and painters.
And we're not talking about like a garbled, uncanny valley mess here.
No, not at all. According to the report, the latent space mapping is so sophisticated that the output is generating original works that are highly reminiscent of the classics.
Wow.
Yeah. The algorithm understands the structural tension in a Beethoven symphony or the specific emotional weight of a Van Gogh brushstroke, and it is generating entirely new pieces using that synthesized understanding.
But the report notes a sharp divide in how this is being received. Audiences are apparently thrilled. They're packing into concert halls and captivating art exhibitions to consume this generated art.
But the art purists are raising major red flags.
Oh, they are furious. And I have to say, I am entirely with the purists here. I challenge the fundamental premise that this machine is being creative.
You see it as mimicking rather than creating.
Yeah, I see it as a highly advanced mathematical DJ. It is just sampling the greatest hits of human history.
I mean, that's one way to look at it.
It maps the chord progressions that make us cry or the color palettes that make us feel nostalgia, and it just mathematically remixes them. But true art, to me at least, requires a shared human vulnerability.
The intent behind the piece.
Right. If a human writes a song about heartbreak, I connect with it because I know that person actually felt the sting of loss. If a machine writes a song about heartbreak, it hasn't felt anything.
It doesn't have a soul to pour into it.
Exactly. It is just manipulating acoustic frequencies to trigger my mirror neurons. It feels like an emotional parlor trick. It's faking a connection.
I get that. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to grapple with the other half of that source material, which is the audiences who are packing those exhibitions.
Sure, the people who love it.
Right. You argue that the lack of a soul in the machine invalidates the art. But what about the person standing in the gallery weeping at the painting?
Well,
Their tears are real. Their aesthetic and emotional experience is entirely genuine.
but they are being manipulated by a statistical model.
Does the intent of the creator matter more than the perception of the receiver? This is why the algorithm is causing such an uproar. It fundamentally challenges our definition of what makes art original or valuable.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Whether the program is exhibiting spontaneous creativity or whether it's just executing the most sophisticated emotional mimicry the world has ever seen, the impact on your cultural consumption is exactly the same.
Because the reaction is happening in me.
Exactly. The aesthetic experience occurs in your brain, not in the machine's code.
That is such a deeply unsettling thought. It implies that human emotion, the thing we hold up as our unique spark, might just be another mappable pattern.
It's just more data.
Wow. And if the AI learns the pattern, it can push our emotional buttons just as easily as it finds the pattern for diabetes or a stock market crash.
Yeah.
We are essentially sharing our cultural space with an algorithm.
It's the new infrastructure of our shared reality, which is really why the digest concludes exactly where it does.
Right. Let's follow this logical thread to the end. If AI is now diagnosing our bodies with a rigorousness that surpasses our top doctors,
Yeah.
if it's managing our global wealth, and if it's now infiltrating our culture, writing the music that moves us and painting the pictures that captivate us, I mean, it is completely, inextricably embedded in the human experience.
Completely.
So how do we keep it accountable?
And this is the crux of the final piece of the digest, the desperate push for ethical guardrails. A global consortium of tech companies and ethicists has proposed a new, comprehensive set of guidelines for responsible AI development.
And their core focus, above everything else, is on algorithmic transparency.
Right.
The report explicitly states their goal is to ensure that decisions made by machines can be understood and traced by humans. They want to address the massive, growing public concern about autonomous decision-making.
In order to build trust, trust is the ultimate currency of artificial intelligence. If society rejects the technology, its capabilities just don't matter.
So what does this all mean for you?
Right.
It means the consortium wants a paper trail for the math. They want the AI to show its work.
Like a math test in grade school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's challenge the practical reality of this for a second, because this feels like a massive contradiction based on everything we just discussed.
Okay, how so?
Think back to the healthcare AI. We established that its singular value is its ability to operate in a high-dimensional vector space, processing tens of thousands of microscopic variables that human eyes literally miss.
Right, the things we can't see.
So how on earth you make a fundamentally superhuman thought process transparent to a human mind?
This raises an important question, and it highlights the defining dilemma of modern computer science. The trade-off between capability and explainability.
Explainability, okay.
We call these advanced neural networks black boxes for a reason. Data goes in, a miraculously accurate decision comes out, but the pathways inside the box are so complex, so dense with overlapping mathematical weights, that even the programmers who built it cannot trace the exact path of a single decision.
It would be like asking an astrophysicist to explain the entire scope of quantum mechanics using only the vocabulary of a human toddler.
That's a great analogy.
You inherently lose the complexity that made the science valuable in the first place.
But the consortium is arguing that the alternative is societal collapse.
Really?
Yeah. Think about it. If a black box AI denies you a crucial mortgage or diagnoses you with a life-altering terminal illness, and absolutely no one, not the bank, not the doctor, not the developer, can explain to you why that specific choice was made.
Public trust evaporates overnight.
Exactly. We are willing to accept advice from a machine, but we violently resist surrendering our agency to something we cannot interrogate.
But if we force the AI to only make decisions that a human can easily trace and easily understand, aren't we literally kneecapping its intelligence?
In a way, yes.
We are telling the machine to stop looking at the microscopic, life-saving clues just so our human brains don't feel left out of the equation. We are artificially limiting the math to protect our egos.
Well, the consortium's push for traceable algorithms is a desperate attempt to maintain a leash on something that is rapidly outgrowing us. They're trying to ensure that humanity always has the final understanding of how our reality is being shaped.
It makes sense on a human level.
It does. But you are entirely correct to point out the flaw in their ambition. Forcing explainability onto a hyper-advanced neural network might fundamentally break the very tool we are trying to utilize.
Wow. Okay. We have covered an incredible amount of ground today.
We really have.
Just by dissecting this one snapshot from March 2026, we've mapped out a massive shift in society. We started with AI as the ultimate logical savior, processing data in high-dimensional spaces to solve medical and financial puzzles that leave human analysts in the dust.
Right.
We watched that same pattern recognition engine cross the subjective line, mapping our emotions to mimic human creativity in ways that, thrill audiences and terrify the purists.
The mathematical DJ.
A mathematical DJ. And finally, we examined the global scramble to build guardrails around it all, demanding transparency from algorithms that are increasingly operating beyond our cognitive limits.
It's a profound transition. We are no longer just building tools. We are attempting to manage a complex, alien logic that is deeply integrated into our daily lives.
And before we go, we want to leave you with a final lingering thought. A paradox drawn straight from the friction hiding inside these sources.
Yeah, this is the big one.
Throughout this deep dive, we've seen this repeated, desperate demand for control. The finance developers insist on human oversight before making a trade. The ethics consortium demands that every algorithm be traceable by humans.
We want the benefits of the machine, but we absolutely refuse to let go of the steering wheel.
But if AI's greatest value to our society, its ability to cure our diseases, stabilize our markets, and maybe even expand our culture, comes specifically from its ability to process realities that human eyes literally cannot perceive.
Right.
Aren't we inevitably speeding toward a point where AI's logic becomes too vast for us to ever trace?
That is the ultimate paradox of this era. How can we meaningfully oversee a machine that outpaces our own comprehension? Can we ever truly govern an intelligence that we require precisely because we cannot understand it?
It's a question that completely breaks that X-ray machine we talked about at the very start. We are no longer looking at a clean, simple, broken bone.
No, we're not.
We are staring into the murky depths of a mind that isn't human, demanding that it explains itself in a language we can understand. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we gave you some clarity on the mechanisms reshaping our world.
Or at least armed you with some fascinating new questions to ask.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Stay curious, keep exploring, and we hope you'll ponder that final paradox as you navigate the complexities of the world today.